the family. Peace, peace. Situated. Oh, a lot going on. Whole lot going on in the news today. Need to play catch up. All right. Peace to the family, peace to you and yours. All right. Peace. Whole lot going on. And we need to play catch up. This is too much going on. We need like a 24-hour news network at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like a 24-hour news network on some CNN shit. For alternative news for indigenous people, we need a 24-hour news service. Okay? I got this is my 50-year hip-hop 50 outfit. I'm going to be wearing this a lot as of late. I got my Kango, I got my gazelles, I got my braids, right? I got my my shit growing. I got my braids. I got my bottom grills. And I got a polo on, right? This is my hip-hop, and I got beads. My hip-hop 50 get up. I'm going to be representing all 50 years. Every day of the 50-year anniversary, that's what I meant. You know what I'm saying? But I want to toast to hip-hop's next 50. I could technically live into the next 50. I'll be 97. You know what I'm saying? That's not outside of the scope of reality. But if we want to preserve our lives, right, for the next 50 years, there's things that we're going to have to start doing right now. There's conversations that we're going to have right now, right, in order to maintain, in order to retain our lease here on life. We're going to have to fight for it. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is appearing to be, because there's a lot going on planet Earth right now. And the same thing that happened in hip-hop is the same thing that's happening on planet Earth, right? The cool kids and the righteous guys, you feel me? Them niggas went to sleep. They got so fucking righteous, right? They got so righteous in their ignitions that they went to sleep. They got comfortable. You feel me? They actually thought that they had a victory and that there was a cause of celebration. And them niggas went to sleep. And they forgot that evil don't rest, right? Evil don't rest. If there's such a thing called the devil, that motherfucker's operating 24/7. You know what I'm saying? He got a starting five and a backup starting five. The nigga bench never stays warm, right? If the starting five is not on the field putting up points, then he got a backup five ready to fulfill, you know what I'm saying, their roles. And this shit, like, there's never a time where they take a rest. They don't take no breaks. Yeah, 25-8. You understand? So anything that the righteous have done, evil is working, wicked is working, double time to catch up and surpass it and loop it and lap it. So we got to do work, because the good guys is the lazy guys. The good guys, you know, they think that one moral victory counts and it's superseding and the shit is going to, you know, really win the war. And that's not what's taking place right now, right? Evil is operating on multiple fronts and they're running a route on the good guys, right? The good guys is too soft. Feel me? They don't want to get their hands dirty. Shit is despicable. So I want to open up and say, I send my deepest heartfelt condolences to the people of Maui and Hawaii. I'm losing my humanity by fucking around on technology. You know what I'm saying? And it's almost like we're in a rush to decode, we're in a rush to decipher, we're in a rush to prove things that have really no bearing and no merit on the larger discussion. Like, niggas is not gonna do nothing. Like, if we go to all of these lengths to prove that it's direct energy weapons, What, niggas is gonna fire direct energy weapons back at them? Right? So we focusing on the wrong things initially. Okay, you under attack. Motherfuckers is in denial that they under attack. What about the people that acknowledge that they're under attack? You gonna pray on it? You summoning the spirits, my nigga? You the same niggas that don't believe in seances and summoning spirits to begin with, because you niggas is the good guys. You so fucking righteous that you don't have no defense system. It's like the people that you so alkaline that your first introduction to something acidic is gonna fuck your entire world up and send you in a tizzy, right? Because you can't even eat dirt anymore because you so clean. So what? And I'm speaking for myself, right? I'm not French. I don't fuck with the French, so I'm gonna keep the word "we" out of my language for a minute here. Me, in order to maintain my humanity, you feel me? I need to self-assess why I do things, you feel me, when I do them, into what capacity. So I need to lead with the heart, right? We are in the season of Leo, still learning some very key lessons about Leo, what the sun has to offer, what the universe by way of the sun. The sun is a transmitter. Let me show it to you right now. Let me just get this shit out the way, right? And shout out to, you know, those of us that are truth seekers who really have been digging. Shout out to KT. Shout out to Akibalon. I want to acknowledge these younger brothers, right, that are doing the work, pulling up, you know, the rear of the work. You know what I'm saying? Making us old heads look good. Like we was actually out here teaching something. You feel me? But these young brothers are fearless in their ability to stand on business regardless of how it looks out here in society. Right? Because it's not always the most trendiest thing to do. Stand on truth. But this is a cosmic confirmation, right, that I think is worth noting. And I could put it into my own language, right? I could say, oh, this is the corona risings, shit we've been telling you. But I like what Akibalon has been doing with the algorithm as of lately. I like what KT has been doing, focusing on getting our people to focus on grounding. Right? Can't always see so good in these glasses. Language of cells. No, that's not it. Scientists uncover unprecedented energy coming from the sun, right? That's really where I want to get to. This particular article right here. They have uncovered unprecedented energy coming from the sun. And some people could say, oh, that's a given. It's not necessarily a given. Language of cells, that's one piece. That's not what I'm trying to get to. This it? This ain't it either. Y'all just give me a second. I got a lot of articles in my queue. But yeah, you know, the constant focus, you know, reorientating the public to pay a deeper concentration to the energy that's coming from the sun. The sun is a transmitter. So the energy, let me put this up here. I'll get back to that article. I'm going to look for it. But the sun is a transmitter. You know what I'm saying? So there's energy that's coming from behind the sun. Think of the sun like a mirror. It's refracting and reflecting energy to us. You know what I'm saying? So there's energy coming from behind the sun that has intensified, and we're being impacted by that on this planet, right? And it's radiation, so it's dealing with mutations specifically, right? Are you mutating as a people? Only you can answer that for yourself. I'm going to tell you some stories in a minute, right? As evidence that I know that there's a mutation taking place. I can see it in the animals and I can see it in the insects. Not so much so the people, right? Even though the people's turning up. Melanated people in particular, right? All right, give me a second, y'all. These is tags. All right. Yeah. One more second, I'll be right there with y'all. So, I want to lead with the heart, because again, we are in Leo season. Let me get back to that. Right? I want to send my heartfelt condolences, the deepest of condolences, to the people of Hawaii, of the island of Maui, of Lahaina, that are experiencing insurmountable pain. You know what I'm saying? For the most part, you know, they've lost their island, right? They lost their island. They've lost their way of life. You know what I'm saying? They've lost their history. Their heritage is being infringed upon. You know what I'm saying? I want to lead with the heart first and foremost, because there's nothing that you can tangibly do right now about the direct energy weapons, even if you find that out to be a fact. Like, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? You can't do a damn thing. But what you can do is connect with people compassionately on a heart level. What we can do is increase the vibration around the healing process that needs to take place. What we can do is put a prayer up. What we can do is actually make donations to people who are verified in terms of the relief effort. What we can do is have a collectivized virtual quantum vigil, right? A prayer of protection. You know what I'm saying? A prayer of compassion, a prayer of relief, right? These are the things that we have the ability and the capacity to do, that we need to put at the forefront. We need to lead with the heart. You feel me? All of the rest of the stuff is secondary. You wanting to be a crime buster online and shit, an online internet sleuth, how's that going to help the people of Hawaii that are going through, you know what I'm saying, these sort of situations? Whatever the powers that be, you know, they think 5 or 6 steps ahead of the game anyway, so this wasn't their final play. Yeah, I definitely mean the mountaintop, you know, and I'm not utilizing this as a commercial for our venture to Stone Mountain on September 9th, but these are going to be the things that we're focusing on. You know what I'm saying? We're going to be focusing on what are our powers. You know, how can we respond to perceived attacks, especially ones that are energy based? You know what I'm saying? What is our means of redress? How can we push back? How can we get back? You know what I'm saying? Do we have friends in high places? You know, how can we verify these things? Because these people is in an arms race, obviously, right? And they're showing you that the weaponry of the future is all laser based. So if you've seen, you know, people are showing footage of the direct energy weapons. Imagine a weapon that fires like that. Just look at the devastation of Lahaina. And imagine a laser that shoots that does never stop, right? That's what China just invented. And this is bad timing for them to come out with this story, if you ask me personally. You know what I'm saying? This is bad timing for them to come out with this story and this narrative that they've created a superior laser right? They can outdo with Lockheed Martin and the rest of the U.S. and military industrial industry has created. This is terrible timing to come out with a narrative such as this. And I'm going to show you what they're competing against. Right? And this is real. This is a very real quantum race to space. Right? This is the final frontier. This is what these people are fighting for. It's called quantum supremacy. To be able to fight the war in space from space. You know what I mean? Let alone the war that they'll be fighting, you know, against space. That's a whole nother conversation. And I don't know if we're ready for that. Alright, so let me go here. Right? Unprecedented times that we are in. You got to keep your head on the swivel. There's a lot going on. All right, give me 1 second, y'all. Notes, I don't want to say they're all over the place. I just got a lot of notes. I got a lot of commentary. I got a lot of content. So I just got to shift through it and properly find the right slide that I'm trying to get to. Boom, boom, boom. Is this it? Yeah, so 9, we will be going up to Stone Mountain at sunrise, and we're going to be putting in a lot of work. You know what I'm saying? I can't get into all of it right here, but, you know, it's not going to be anything that's outside of the scope of, you know, what you're capable of. You know what I'm saying? You're not being brought into any ritualistic ceremony, right? There will be no harming of animals will be taking place on this mountaintop. Just to get that out the way. You feel me? We ain't up there trying to free young thugs, sacrificing the goats. So don't let that be, you know, a reason that you don't pull up. You know, everything is going to be on the highest of vibrations with the most sincere intentions. You feel me? And we just going to go up there and resonate a particular frequency and an energy. So, 9/9, September 9th, which is a Saturday, here in Atlanta, Georgia, we'll be meeting up at Crystal Mountain at 6:44 a.m. It is right before sunrise. Sunrise on that day is something like 7:15 a.m. So we're going to meet up at the base of the mountain, which is Walk Up Trail, near Confederate Hall, and we'll be doing our walk up from there. I don't know where else people enter the mountain to go and do the walk up. It's the same place that everybody meets to walk up the mountain. That's where we meeting at. There's no backside of the mountain, from what I understand, that you can walk up. We're walking up where everybody walks up. Okay? On 9/9, we're starting our meetup around 6:44, 6:45 a.m. at the base of the mountain. And we will be ascending the mountain. Right? So this article just came out today. And this is about the unprecedented amount of gamma radiation that's coming from the sun right now. Right? The sun is operating on a whole nother octave. As we've been telling you for forever and a day. Shout out to Akibalan. Shout out to my brother KT. Shout out to the brother Kali as well. I don't know his whole name, but y'all know who I'm talking about. He does the weather forecast continuously on his page, right? Shout out to that brother. Astrophysicists reveal the sun is beaming down gamma rays with energies higher than ever measured. Okay? It's what we've been telling you about. It's what I've been singing for this whole summer, just based on what I'm seeing the insects do, just based on what I'm seeing animals do. Animals as well. Animals are on another level right now. They have an unprecedented amount of willpower in them to fight, to survive, to retain and maintain here on this planet. They are not letting go of life. They're holding on a whole nother level. Yes, there's a quantum quickening taking place. And it is being revealed through the sun. It's not coming from the sun. It's coming through the sun. Okay? So the gamma rays lose energy in Earth's atmosphere, meaning that they don't present a concern to life. This also allows them to be discovered by researchers working with the whatever, right? This shows that the HAWOC, the High Altitude Weather Cherenkov Observatory, is located in Mexico, right? The acronyms are for HAWC, Hawk. I guess you could pronounce it Hawk, right? So this is what they are detecting. They're detecting an unprecedented amount of radiation coming from the sun. If you even look at this picture, even this picture looks like a DEW, which is a direct energy weapon, and a laser beam from the sky. This looks like the same image that is circulating on social media showing the lasers hitting in Hawaii before the fires, right? And again, like I said, we have to take personal account. And this is on a person-to-person basis. You feel me? What good is it being an internet sleuth if you can't do anything about it, right? We are unveiling, unpacking, and revealing information that we cannot act upon. That shit causes a psychosis, right? It causes a psychosis in the long term. You're compounding psychosis in your mind by entertaining, quote unquote, let's just say for the lack of a better term, conspiracies that you can't do anything about. Ultimately, you're going to feel powerless, or you're going to have so much pent-up frustration that you're going to lash out one day and do something very irrational because it's going to fuck with you, that you have all this information that you can't do anything about, right? But what you can do is you can open up your heart. You can open up your home. You can open up your wallet if you need to, right? To say, damn, I helped somebody in need that was over there that was really feeling it, that really lost everything, that really needs more than just platitudes. Yo, it's going to be all right. How you know that? You have no idea, nigga. You can't tell yourself it's going to be all right. Yeah. You see what they doing on the planes right now? They wigging out. You see what they doing in the concerts? They wigging out. You see what they doing in these streets? They wigging out. Right? Everybody's wigging out. And it all is going to be contingent on how you process this insurmountable amount of radiation that's coming from the sun. And they want to call this shit climate change or all this stupidness. Right? Call it what it is. It's an upgrade that's taking place, but it's aggressive. It's KRS-One on stage at Hip Hop 50. That's what this shit looks like. It's that type of energy. These niggas is waking up choosing violence. We now have observational techniques that weren't possible a few years ago. In this particular energy regime, other ground-based technology couldn't look at the sun because they only work at night. Ours operate 24/7. Right? So they have new technology. They are able to peer at the sun 24/7 and make these observations and these detections. Right? The energy is off the Richter. Radiation is impacting and hitting this planet at a rate that has never been seen before. And it is going to have a direct effect on you, especially if you're melanated. Right? I highly suggest you can Google it, go on YouTube and watch the first episode of The Incredible Hulk. right? The Incredible Hulk was mutated utilizing, they used a cell line from a melanated woman. The melanated woman was characterizing Henrietta Lacks in Incredible Hulk. She was able to lift a car for her child, right? She had a response to seeing a car on her baby, and she switched into Hulk mode and threw the car off her baby. She hulked, right? Lift the car up and threw it off her child. These are based on real stories and real events, because things like this really happen. They took her cell line for research and study, right? David Banner or Bill Bixby, whatever they was calling the nigga at the time, right? He haphazardly left the gamma radiation on longer than expected, and the gamma split the cell in a particular way that he got exposed to the radiation. But it was not just the radiation that changed him into the Hulk. It was the radiation on the sister cell line specifically that mutated the cell that created him into the Hulk. Okay? So you can Google this shit and you can go and see YouTube for yourself if you did not see the first episode of the TV series called The Incredible Hulk starring Lou Ferrigno. Okay? So science already knows the capabilities that you have as a melanated being by being exposed to insurmountable amounts of radiation, or gamma radiation for that matter. KT been telling you this shit, and here we are. We're at that point where this plane of existence is being mutated, is going through a mutation based on gamma radiation, and things is just now getting turned up. It's going to be unidentifiable in 6 months, my niggas. Trust me when I tell you. Unidentifiable. The amount of change that's about to come to this plane of existence. And it's going to be abrupt. Right? So, yeah, that's the radiation factor. You know what I'm saying? Let me say what else is in the news today that connects to this narrative. Which one? What are they saying here? Talking in waves, right? The unique communication language of cells. I thought that we always knew that, but thought we always knew that. Morocco breaks heat record, right? They're breaking heat records out here left and right. You know what I'm saying? Unprecedented amounts of heat coming through, right? And it's not just all based on global warming. Right? This is really based on the sun transmitting a whole nother vibrational frequency from beyond. From beyond. You know what I'm saying? Now imagine this. Right? Because we think that we got issues and shit. We got water bugs. Like in the South, that's our main issue. Right? My wife, she loses her shit if a water bug pops up. Right? They got water bugs out here, y'all. They don't got cockroaches, they got water bugs. Shit different. But imagine if you lived in India, you know what I'm saying? And the issue that you had and shit was crocodiles emerging out the motherfucking sidewalk, just busting loose. Imagine if you had that type of issue. So you need to count your blessings. You need to count your blessings, nigga. Right? Because you could be living in the bando in India somewhere, you feel me? And it's not a rose that rises out of the concrete, nigga. It's a crocodile. That's a whole nother type of, yo, I lost my shit. Yeah, I bet you did. Bet you had a borderline heart attack because some motherfucking crocodiles came up out the ground. Right? That's a whole nother type of issue than you calling DOT because you got potholes on your street. You like, damn, these niggas taking care. They doing Atlanta bad. They not even fixing the roads. We got potholes everywhere and shit. Or you thought that you had problems. Okay, these niggas got whole crocodiles coming out their streets. Shit different, man. The animals is moving different out here. I know that you've seen additional footage. These niggas is different. Ironically, on the same day, right? Because we got to find the news the same way that we do the Bible on Sunday. It's the same way that we do the news and set all 7 days. We find commonalities in the narrative and the script. Why so many stories about crocodiles today, right? They say that crocodiles find the wail of distressed babies irresistible, right? Who wants to read some shit like that? Especially when we know that our babies were being fed to alligators as gator bait. Crocodiles and gators ain't no different, right? But your wailing babies, you know what I'm saying? The wail of babies are irresistible to crocodiles. So once again, if outside of the fact that if you live in Louisiana or if you live in Florida, you know what I mean? This is not your issue, right? Outside of them, this ain't your issue. You don't wake up every day worrying about you got crocodiles in your backyard or gators and shit like that. So other people got real life situations that they got to deal with. Our family and what's considered to be these third world countries, India and Africa, these are their neighbors, right? These are the wild animals and things of that nature that they got to deal with. We don't have the same issues, right? The villages are surrounded by wild animals, and they got to deal with that. You wake up in the morning and shit, and they got to check the see if the babies are still there because lions be on the creek, hyenas be running down on shit. You know what I'm saying? Crocodiles is in your backyard. Yo, the world is real, y'all. We live in an insulated bubble. That's why I don't even knock the whole shit that they're showing with the flat earthers when they be showing the dome. People live in domes. They live in self-imposed domes, right? And the strength of your dome is contingent and dependent on the contracts that you have signed up, nigga. Because if they got you in a soul contract, you exist in a dome that can't be broken. I'll say that again. If they got you in a soul contract like these entertainers who don't own their likeness, right, or their names for perpetuity throughout the universe, them niggas live in a dome. They can't go past that glass ceiling. It's only but so much they can do. They live in a self-imposed dome. So the pictures that the flat earthers be showing you with the motherfucking dome, that's literally what it looks like how some people are living, or communities, or societies, or even whole countries. They live under domes. They live under, self-imposed constructed glass ceilings that they cannot go past. Whether them niggas is in a SpaceX rocket or not, they can't get out the dome. So we live in a dome. We live in an artificial construct, and we think that this is really life. And if you have not been outside of the borders of the U.S., nigga, you have not seen the real world. Because there's people dealing with some real shit that they don't cry and complain and do hissy fits about. We have the ability, right? Based on our orientation, the shit that we talking about is hissy fitting. We online hissy fitting all day and all night. You know what I'm saying? We looking for minor shit to complain about that really has no bearing on reality. Right? We just think that it means so much because we're going through it. That shit don't mean nothing. Not in the long run of things. Feel me? Not in the long run of things. You know, we're convenient complainers. You know, woe is me type of people and shit. Right? We got issues like this in this world that we live in this society. San Franciscans are having sex in robo-taxis and nobody are talking about it. These are the type of issues we got. Right? This is shit that we wake up talking about. Drug addicts and shit like that. Like, certain countries, them niggas can't scrape up enough money to be addicted to drugs. You know how resourceful a fiend is? Do you know how resourceful a fiend is? You've been smoking crack for 30 years. They have found every fucking dollar. Like, the fiends need to teach the community activists how to fundraise. Because the fiends will find the money. But the community activists can't. You've been community activists in your community for like 2 or 3 decades and you ain't, niggas still ain't raised the money for Dr. Umar's motherfucking building. If he put some crackheads in charge of that operation, they would have found those resources in under 2 months. And you know this to be the truth. They are some of the most resourceful people in our community when it comes to fundraising, but we're not utilizing them properly. And you can stand to learn something from them about relationships, because I know crackheads that have been together for 30 plus years. And he's seen her sucking dick and doing the most, and he's still with her. That's his ride or die, bitch. For real. Not for fake. For real. They are in the field. You know what I'm saying? You've seen them together for 30 years. Dirty and crusty, but they still together. Right? Why the 5-star bad bitch with all of the motherfucking foreign designer drip shit can't keep a man? She got BBLs and all of that shit, but she can't keep a dude. But this crusty crackhead bitch, she been with the same nigga for 30 years. And he makes sure that she smoke. I'm just saying, is it facts or is it fake? Is it a fiction or is it fact? We got our priorities fucked up in the first world. Peace, brother. We got our priorities fucked up. You know what I'm saying? And we've had it so good for so long that we don't even realize how good we got it. And we really think that this shit is struggle. Now, I'm going to give you a perfect example of the backdrop, right? Look at the backdrop. Let's just be honest.
Hip-hop, for rising out of the rubble.
It was rubble.
For giving a voice to those who were silenced. For never staying silent. For innovating everything you touch. For showing us how to spin on our heads without losing our balance. For turning gray walls into art. For turning us into entrepreneurs. And for showing us that everything is possible.
Granted.
For holding space for everyone wanting to participate. For the joy and hope you give. For showing us that we can use what we got and don't need anything else. For teaching us how to turn something old into something new again and again. For being unapologetically you. For teaching us respect. For never standing still. For always evolving, always staying fresh. For showing us our potential. For making the world more exciting. For making dreams come true. Thank you for saving lives, for saving my life over and over again. Thank you to the fathers and mothers, to the pioneers who birthed this beautiful culture, and to those who have and continue to keep it alive. Thank you for hip-hop. Thank you for the past 50 years. Thank you, hip-hop, for rising out of the rubble.
Hip-hop. Hip-hop. Right? Hip-hop. I'm short on words. Hip-hop. Ah, man. Hip-hop, the gift that keeps giving. You know what I'm saying? Our evidence to ourselves that we're alchemists. Right? So what? We're untrained alchemists. Nobody took time. Right? They didn't pour into us in that particular fashion. We had to figure it out on the fly. And this is what we come up with. Hold on, y'all gotta get that with the vocals. You gotta rock out to this with the vocals though. Hopefully. got, pardon me, y'all. I'm just having a very nostalgic moment. I couldn't make the Hip Hop 50 event in Yankee Stadium. They wanted a ransom to fly to New York at the last minute. Granted, I wasn't there, but my 44s was in the building. They was the most prominent number displayed outside of the number 50 on that stage that night. I don't think that this is disputable, right? Y'all can agree with me. I'm not making this shit up, am I? You seen that number that night more than you seen any other number. I think I seen it more than I even seen the number 50 that night. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I want to acknowledge, hip hop for what it has done, to save us from ourselves. To save us from ourselves. Now imagine life without hip hop. You know what I'm saying? And your condition, you know what I mean? What I'm saying is this, that, yeah, there are third world societies, for lack of a better term. I'm just utilizing that term so we can identify these places that we're speaking of, right? As has been told to us, but we know that they're not third world. They're really first world societies, right? Nonetheless, the people in those environments and those societies are dealing with things that are a lot more egregious than what we have to deal with on a daily basis, right? Even if we have grown up in inner cities and bombed out abandoned buildings and we're surrounded by fiends and things of that nature, again, the fiends show you that there's resources available, right? Because they get high every day. And a lot of them only operate within the proximity of their perimeter, but they're able to find funds. They're just looking in places that you're not, and they're willing to do things that you're not willing to do to come up with the money, right? So the money was always there because the fiends found it. You feel me? And then the hustlers absorbed it. So the hustlers had the money as well, right? So the money was there, but the money never got perfectly redistributed back to community because the hustlers took the money and they went to Audi, they went to Saab, they went to Mercedes-Benz dealership. They went, you know what I'm saying? When they stopped going to see Dapper Dan, they started actually going to Gucci and Fendi and Louis and Madison Avenue and downtown. So outside of the fact that you made it gave Shorty $100 and he went and spent $100 in the candy store. Remember, this is when you could get Big Pop, right? You could get the bubble pops and everything for 2 cents, right? They had 2 cents. I remember getting candy for a penny, if I'm not bugging. Red, can you help me? I think the little round gums and shit that you chewed, there was candy that you could get for a penny. I used to go to the candy store with 25 cents, and I would walk away with a bag full of candy. So the hustler give the little nigga $100 to go and buy candy, and you get more than you need, and then you fuck your teeth up, and now you got to get gold grills, right? So it was like a gift and a curse. You feel me? It was a gift and a curse. But the resources were there. They were just not where you were looking for them, right? I use this example continuously. Okay? That the community activists will be in their community saying, yo, we got to raise $80,000 to keep this community center open, or to keep this, whatever community activities that I have in the community, right? I got to keep it going. So I got to find these funds in order to continuously feed these children. We got community centers. We got community activities. We got all of this community-based shit. And this is for the children, right? And they can't get the funds. Overnight, a young nigga can make 80 racks. Overnight. This is not even a whole day shift. This is overnight. Right? I mean, that's one hell of some cocaine. That's one hell of a bomb. The little niggas was saying they was making like 10 or 15 a night. So I'm exaggerating. Right? I'm exaggerating. Right? But let's say they bust down a key and they split it between 5 or 6 hustlers. You can come up with more than 60 racks or more than 80 racks a night. You feel me? If you got the right amount of work. And if your work is hitting. So how can a 17-year-old drug dealer in a community find the resources that community activists that's like 70, 60, 50, 60, you know, these niggas been at this shit for like 20 or 30 years, but they can't find the resources, right? But a crackhead can find the resources and give it to a dumb 17-year-old who the next day is going to go to the Audi dealership with all of the money in a paper bag and buy a brand new car. Right? That's the type of shit that we dealing with. From the 80s, nigga, it's in 2023, and the community activists still ain't figured this shit out. And I'm laughing to keep from crying because this is the type of shit that we was dealing with, right? In Harlem. Attempting to do right. Coming from the streets, nigga, I knew how fast street money came. I would cry, ready to tell you, if I made anything less than $1,000 a day, nigga, I probably was suicidal. I felt like I was a failure. And I really didn't, I was not comfortable with my existence if I was unable to scrap up at least $1,000 a day. It had to literally like be $1,500 for me to be cool about it and be like, all right, well, tomorrow's another day. But something like $3,000 to $3,500 a day, that was more in line with a good day. And then you get into the righteous stuff. You get into the other side of the tracks, and you'll be lucky if you make $100 a day, $200. You happy? You think that you lit if you make $500 a day. You think that you've arrived, and you're ready to go out there and help hundreds of people and shit because you made $500 a day. You know what I'm saying? You feel like you motherfucking Peter Pan or some shit like that. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, you was considered a bum, a failure. You was a derelict. If you couldn't make $1,000 a day doing what the fuck we was doing, yeah, you was the bottom of the barrel. You know what I'm saying? Niggas will take advantage of you. So things change, man. You know what I'm saying? Things are continuously changing, and it's all based on perspective. But hip hop, we cannot blame hip hop. You know, hip hop is a godsend. You know what I'm saying? So you are only really not. What I was saying is that our conditions don't compare to other people's conditions. But if you are not exposed to those conditions, you only know what you're exposed to, right? You only know what you're exposed to. We exist in this fishbowl. So if my environment looks like this, and my environment is communicating and telling me things like, yo, it's inescapable. It's impossible for you, you know what I'm saying, to be upwardly mobile in a situation like this. You know what I'm saying? Or there are no resources because look at this place. All of these things are being told to you. You don't know how to make sense of any of it. And then along comes hip hop. Let's go back to hip hop real quick. Let's just walk through this. You feel me? Because yes, our condition, our situation is not as bad as others, right?
Thank
but
you,
we made the best of our situation.
For rising out of the
and
rubble.
It's worth noting.
For giving a voice to those who were silenced. For never staying silent. For innovating everything you touch. For showing us how to spin on our heads without losing our balance. For turning gray walls into art. For turning us into entrepreneurs, and for showing us that everything is possible. For holding space for everyone wanting to participate. For the joy and hope you give. For showing us that we can use what we got and don't need anything else. For teaching us how to turn something old into something new again and again. For being unapologetically you.
So, yeah.
For teaching us respect. For never standing still, for always evolving, always staying fresh, for showing us our potential, for making the world more exciting, for making dreams come true. Thank you for saving.
Thank you. Thank you. I cannot say thank you enough. I don't want to spend Hip Hop 50 ranting and raving about what hip hop isn't, what hip hop didn't do for us. You know what I'm saying? Hip hop did way too much for me to ever repay it. You feel me? I don't know who I would be without hip hop. You know what I mean? And I can firmly say that. And that's not independent of my knowledge of self, because hip hop was the vehicle that I was able to comfortably ride down the street observing and looking for my knowledge of self. You know what I'm saying? Hip hop made it cool to be smart when it was cool to be smart. Right? I was able to find my space and my place in hip hop independent of anybody else. I was able to be an individual in this collective called hip hop. I was able to be weird. I was able to be different. You know what I'm saying? I was able to be all of these things myself, right? Under the cover of hip hop. So my acknowledgement of my history is not independent of my acknowledgement of hip hop as a vehicle or as a curator of my culture. You know what I'm saying? It's not independent. It's not opposite that. Hip hop is where it all took place. The conditions were formulated around hip hop to create this thing that we created in the conditions that we created in. Maybe if the conditions were more extreme, the response would have been more extreme, and it would have been revolution and not a artistic revolution, right? Maybe it would have been a military uprising and not an artistic revolution. Hip hop represented an artistic revolution. It represented an artistic creative uprising. It represented right brain consolidation of things that was so heavy on us because of all of the left brain leaning that we had came out of in the 60s when they was inundating us with information about our past, who we were, what we come from, what we capable of, what was going on at the time, all of the conspiracies. Only to find out that J. Edgar Hoover was melanated. You know what I'm saying? So it's the people that's from your own bloodline, from your own stock, who really hate themselves, who will carry on these campaigns. You feel me? So, yes, this artistic revolution called hip-hop that was able to formulate all of these divergent pieces and pull them together to give you a snapshot of what was possible, the possibilities. You know what I'm saying? They was able to put, to turn a frown upside down into a smile, because you could now see light at the end of the tunnel. And this is when it was dark. And hip hop literally rose out of darkness because the blackouts of 1977 in New York City, the blackout of 1977 in New York City is what was responsible for the technological quantum leap that hip hop took. Why? Because now, via retail reparations, when the blackout happened, they were able to get their hands on SP1200, you know what I'm saying? The techniques and the microphones and the amps, right? They were able to extract technology from places from stores and things of that nature, right? That I guess there was a barrier of entry because of the money at that time, right? Finances were separating them from getting to their to getting to the things that would really change their lives and change these neighborhoods and change our conditions. And then the blackout happened. You know what I'm saying? And then it was made possible. And they dealt with their retail reparations. They was able to extrapolate that stuff from, stores and things of that nature. But look what they gave back to the planet. Right? So, it balances itself out. And the universe has very mysterious ways of working. You know what I'm saying? Why create all of that tech? Why endow man with all of this cosmic information to create tech of that magnitude that cannot be utilized by the people who know how to tweak it, who know how to nigger rig it? And they've been nigger rigging ever since. You feel me? It's the same thing that you see in the modern day parlance when we look online and we see them babies in Africa utilizing plastic tubing and shit. They're making fuel out of plastic and things of that nature. They're making robotics out of cardboard. It's the same thing. We the same people. You feel me? And it's our conditions. Right? It's our conditions to become the catalyst to become the mother of all inventions. It's the conditions. You feel me? That spurn the creative juices and the activities within us to be, you know, who we are. Right? Hip hop. You feel me? And it's such a beautiful thing. And my heart is full of joy and honor. You know what I'm saying? I do not like the fact that Africa Bambaataa is being left out of the conversation, though. So let's go into this segment, right? Let's go into this segment, speak about these Godfathers, right? Speak about the Godfathers, right? And I did not know this man. Personally, I never met him. I found out about him when the majority of the world found out about him. Even though I was in the music industry, I had never heard his name in that respect when I was behind the wall in the music industry. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't until, you know, later when the Netflix special came out that I caught on to Clarence Avant, the Black Godfather, and the many things that he was accredited with. You know, some have been spoken in public and some have not been. But nonetheless, he was acknowledged to be a power broker unlike any other that has ever been seen, that has ever walked the face of this earth, because of, you know, this all deals with perfect timing. So the timing that this young man from North Carolina, you know, North Carolina is the North Carolina produces the jewels. Shout out to the Carolinas, period. Once again, like I said, testaments to our narrative and our story. You know, we have such a beautiful story. You know, in the midst of adversity, you feel me? We are the black diamonds that rose. You know what I'm saying? We are the cream of the crop based on our circumstances and the challenges. You know, these are the people who rose up out of the concrete. These are those black roses. Clarence Avant was one. So the timing that he entered the industry and entered, you know, the game, that is what makes his story so profound. The entertainment industry was being dominated by Italian mafia and Jewish mafia, specifically the music business, specifically Hollywood as well. So when he entered that particular dynamic and he stood on business as a melanated man who was principled, right? I'm not going to get into the rumors. I'm not going to get into none of that stuff because I don't know it. Just the fact that he hung out with Quincy Jones is enough to, you know, create a wider discussion. But why should it matter at this point? Right? He married a woman. He held it down with her. Right? He was known for being loyal to her. He edified her in a particular way where her profile was something that other women in that community aspired to, because she appeared to be a well-loved woman who was holding down her man and was the backbone, the reason that was responsible that he was able to go out there and run so many plays. So I'm not going to besmirch his character and speak on things that I don't know. Right? We know that Hollywood is Hollyweird. You know what I'm saying? But for the people that he did have relationships with to speak on, you know, their love for him as an individual and their respect for him, the people that don't even look like us, they was even baffled as to how he was moving and playing in the ways in which he did. Because there was made mobsters that were vouching for him, saying that there was a hands-off policy when it dealt with him. He was supposed to get whatever he wanted. You know what I'm saying? His story is unreal. We've never heard stories told like this about men that look like us. And, you know, men or women. The North Carolina crop is something different. You talking to Afeni Shakur. You talking Clarence Avant. You talking some of the biggest drug dealers ever. You talking Ike Atkinson. You talking Frank Lewis, you talking Frank Matthews, right? They produce different. You talking Noble Drew Ali, right? The Carolinas produce a different type of individual. The men that I know that came from the Wilmington area, right? The men that I know that became industrialists in their own respective field. The men that I know that have so much valor and integrity about them. These is really men to be menning. Come from the Carolinas. So shout out to NC. Shout out to SC. Something different about y'all. You know what I'm saying? And I still want to know. I still want to find. I still want to venture. You know what I mean? I had some wild times in North Carolina in the 1990s. Shout out to my brother Coach Kyer. He was about the only one of y'all niggas that was there. Right? When we was on our you know, we was running through shit. And Greensboro, North Carolina was one of them places. It was a magical place. But goddamn, it was ratchet when it was ratchet. You know? Side effects. Shout out to Side Effects. So yeah, you know, I got locked up in Greensboro. That's a whole nother story. The niggas serve bacon with every meal. I was starving. Because I was on my, at that point I wasn't eating, you know, I wasn't eating pork. Couldn't eat nothing out there. Anyway, Clarence Avant, you feel me? He lost his whiz a few years ago, which I found very weird. You know, as respected as this individual was, like I said, he was a made man. And you don't hear about too many made men outside of Quincy Jones and him in Hollywood, right? Or in LA or in the industry, period. So he was a made man. Literally. Right? This dude, he was the go-between between actual mafia families and melanated people, right? And these melanated people had to depend on him as a go-between, because I don't know if the cat is out the bag or not, but again, when he was coming up, these were the individuals that controlled, who controlled, you know, the music game. They were responsible for the contracts, things of that nature. You had to literally meet with gangsters. You know what I'm saying? And he was the go-between, right? He was the farrier. He was the courier. You know, he was all of them things. So for a man who is considered to be untouchable, to be a made man, you know what I mean? I don't know how his wife randomly ends up getting killed in a home invasion. You know what I mean? But again, it's really not us to, you know, it's so outside of the scope of, you know, where our thoughts and concerns should be at this time. Rest in peace to him, rest in peace to his wife. His daughter, from what I understand, I don't know if she's still married to the head of Netflix, the CEO, but at one point she was. Shout out to her. I believe she just put out a book speaking about overcoming the grief, you know, dealing with loss at that level. You know, everybody speaks about the whiz, the mom, the mother, the matriarch, you know, as you know, she was the godmother. She was, you know, sometimes the woman be the real gangster behind the scene, behind all of these crime families. I can't call it a crime family like that. I'm just slipping because, you know, he was dealing in that world with people who were actually part of crime syndicates and crime families. But can't say that he was part of a crime family just because his name was the Godfather. Yes, but he was heartbroken. And again, you know, we are in the month of Leo, or the season of Leo. Leo deals with the heart. We saw the breaking of hearts earlier this season with Bronny, right? Having a heart attack, a mild heart attack. There was another young man who was a prospect called Caleb. And I've seen this man's footage online. This young brother, he was a high school prospect. He just died over the weekend, right? From a heart attack in the season of Leo, which is symbolized by the heart. You feel me? Yes. Rest in peace to Magoo from Timberland fame. He also transitioned today. They said that he was a prodigy as well. Right? Magoo transitioned. My timeline is lit with a bunch of people who made transition just today. Or over the weekend, let alone. But a lot of people are transitioning today. And it's only noontime. So be mindful of that. Right? There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. But these portals are open. You know what I mean? I seen a member of the community make a disparaging post the other day about the Lions Gate. And then, you know, you can ask the questions. The questions are always merited. You feel me? It's always merited to ask questions. But some things, everything can be analytically or logically explained. Dealing with issues of the spirit. You know what I'm saying? A portal or a gate is a gate. And the shit is sucking a lot of lives in it. You know what I mean? So it would be very hard and remiss to say, oh, that the Lions Gate did not open and suck a bunch of people in it, because we're still seeing a bunch of people getting sucked in. The Maui incident jumped off at the cusp of 8-8 turning into 8-9. I mean, it's neither here nor there, but, you know, hey. We be so hard trying to disprove one another. You know what I'm saying? But it's like we don't reserve that same energy for the real adversary who's out here telling every bold-faced lie that they can. Why do we don't keep the same energy when it comes to them? Why don't you just pool your resources to disprove the known liars? Why don't you focus on the medical industry and stop focusing on spiritualists? Because the receipts are always going to be there. Your inquiry is not bigger than the actual events. Just saying. Anyway. Yeah, so hopefully this brother, you know what I'm saying, finds spiritual comfort, and he's reunited in the realm of light with his soulmate. Yeah, y'all know that all of that shit is fantastical. It just does not happen like that. But anyway, we're dreamers, so yeah. May he reunite in the afterlife with the love of his life. Yeah. May his heart be healed. May they reunite and be soulmates in the next lifetime. Right? More information is gonna come out about this eldest brother. After he has transitioned, so many things are gonna start coming out. People are gonna start telling stories about how great he was and what he did and everything. And we should be there for it all. Hear it out. This man did some amazing things in the industry looking out for melanated people. That's why it'd be so hard for me to understand how hip-hop just blindly walked into the industry with no big homies, right? None of these men who experienced the abuses, right, that had came before hip-hop became a thing. So the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, right, were unprecedented years in music where black men and women found out that they was getting jerked and either was able to do something about it or did nothing about it. We knew about Sam Cooke. We knew about Barry White. These were men that took matters into their own hands and formulated their labels because they wanted to stand on business, right? So we knew that there was an issue in the music industry. And then they had the gatekeepers such as Clarence Avant, such as Quincy Jones, right? Why nobody consulted with Russell Simmons back then? Why did nobody pull in hip-hop in this early phase and said, let me look over these contracts, right? What happened to all of, jazz, R&B, disco? All of these people just came out of literally getting piped by Raping You Records. Right? So it's like, when you went to these people to get sample clearances, none of them ever thought enough about you or thought enough about the industry to be like, young man, let me see these contracts that you signed in. Or don't trust this person over there because they're known to rape the culture, like Clive Davis. Nobody got in between that. Right. Bill Cosby, you know what I'm saying? Before the pound cakes and all of that stuff, he never thought enough to be like, yo, can't trust these people. Know what you're getting into. Let me see these contracts. Let me send a big homie down there that can stand on business for y'all. Right? Let me get an intermediate between you and these Jewish businessmen who are known to fleece entertainers. Nobody. It just never registered. Right? Yeah, it just never registered, huh? So I want to speak about this as well. And I want to do it in the most respectful manner. Right? Because we don't get nothing out of disrespect. And it ain't like I ain't gonna talk about him because he was the 44th president. You know what I'm saying? I'm even that's even more of a reason why what I need to say needs to be said. So Clarence Savant is also accredited with getting Barack Obama into the White House. Right? Because Barack Obama had to be saved because he was going up against the Clintons, who are notorious gangsters. You feel me? And Avant had to intercede on his behalf because it was a given that he would be voting for or endorsing the Clintons, right? Because again, he got to deal with criminals and crime families and syndicates and shit like that. So he already was dealing with the Clintons because he was in Hollywood, right? And that's where they was getting their bag from. Now, as we see what's going on in Africa, as we see what's going on around the world, as we see what's going on here in America with the LGBT agenda, right? And now the truth is starting to come out about Barack Obama. I just want to know, what is it about a penis, right, that makes men throw everything else out the window, and your policies, the shit that you stand for, right? The thing that drives you is your love for something that occurs 1 or 2 hours out of the day, as opposed to your skin suit. You know, who you think that you are based on the body that you came into this planet with, based on the history and the legacy that's connected and attached to that. You feel me? What is it about the pipe that makes these niggas just totally, throw everything else out the window and just be like, I'm going to champion this cause, peace, by any and every means possible. I'm going to make sure that, that there's more piping to go around. I don't get it. Right? So you got a private life. You have a fantasy, that's one thing. But how did you position yourself to become the president that pushes the policy, right, of this entire community, and you did it without thinking twice? But you did nothing for us as a people, and you got to live with yourself for the rest of the days of your life. What is it about the pipe that makes these niggas pledge allegiance to doing the bidding? Because I'm saying this because they came out in 2008 and told us that he was suspect. And we thought that it was a PR campaign for them to besmirch him. There was an article in National Enquirer of all places. And they said that he was gay and that he smoked crack. And they had the receipts because the nigga who he said he was having a relationship with, who told on him, he ended up dead. He ended up dead. Okay? So, we already knew around them times about the Clinton crime syndicate and how bodies keep popping up around them, especially if anyone is attempting to expose them, right? But we totally ignored that homie was coming in as the 44th president, and these allegations was widespread about him at that time, right? And it goes back to, if you are taking wood, you're compromised, right? You have compromised your manhood, especially if you're hiding it. You feel me? Especially if you're hiding it. If you're hiding behind it and you're pretending to be something that you're not, then you're compromised. Because now you give people who know the truth about you leverage, right? And in politics, that particular leverage can end up looking like policy that affects the entire planet forever. So Barack Obama was the one who opened up a lot of different LGBT rights immediately when he got into the presidency. Just like when Biden got in, the first piece of legislation that he passed was for transgenders, right? Barack Obama was responsible for gay marriage. Now again, do I believe that? Fuck what I believe. It's not about what I believe. They got some questions to answer from people who are actual citizens of this country that I think you need to speak to the people first, right? Or the people who think that this is a Christian country. You got answers, you got questions from them that you need to answer about what's right and what's wrong. From my perspective, I know that there was a financial play by them allowing, right, for more contracts to be made by way of marriage. That shit is just for tax purposes, and it's a financial play. The backdrop of it might be saying, oh, they want to erode at the moral fabric of society. But heterosexual marriage is down. And that shit does not work as an institution. You know what I'm saying? There was so many people getting divorced and so many people that were unwed. That's not even a American traditional institution that is long standing and needs to be defended. Because it was failing. Right? And this shit is really just a play contractually for the state to be in your business. You are just contracting to be a deeper slave in their system by way of that marriage certificate. Right? It's another contract. It's another soul contract. The dome over your head just gets a lot more solid. Hence the fact that you just can't divorce a motherfucker. You got to go through proceedings. They got to go through an unraveling, and the state is in the middle of all of that. Tell me if I'm making this up. Tell me if I'm making this up. Tell me if I'm making this up. Right? So you're potentially looking at a situation where they got a line of information, because either he was with it or he got compromised and he was forced to do it. But by the looks of things, it looks like he was with it from the door, and this was the plan all along. You know what I'm saying? That this nigga was somebody's boy toy, and they figured out, okay, we could give him a 2-for-1 special with Barry O. Right? we can help stem the racial animosity that existed post Katrina and post 9/11, because melanated people don't take that shit personal as they should. The war in Iraq or the war in Islam, period, which was the restarting of the Crusades, which deal with Christendom versus the Moors. So there's like, let's put a Moorish president in there so we can stavie off all of this anger from these Moorish people who feel offended that we're now coming at their necks based on the prop of war. Yeah, post Bush II, when we was tired of George W. II, then they went and got it. They went and got his cousin Obama, right? Yeah, the Punic Wars 3.0, and then they installed him, and the first piece of legislation that he pushes is LGBT agenda. And he stood on business and he never wavered. But he did nothing for the people, other than give outward gestures to Moors to let them know that he was with the shits. And then they started coming for his ass after that with the Bertha campaign. And he wasn't able to do nothing after that. He probably had a 3-month to a 6-month run in the presidency before they put the wolves on him. And the result of the biggest wolf on his back at that time, pause, was Donald Trump. Because he was the #1 truther. He led the campaign against this nigga. And they ate him up from the inside out. Pause. And this is the result of his policy. Yeah, we got some amazing symbolism if you knew how to decode it and detect what you was looking at. He went to Egypt and spoke about the Alhambra, and he put on record that the Moors were the first people to recognize the U.S. with the treaties. He did all that, and his wife was at the Alhambra at the same time. They did all of that cute Moorish posturing, standing behind or in front of the Moorish flag, speaking to the Moors. Yeah, he did all that. And it served his ass because of it. Right? And all deals was on the table. Even if he ran the play and pushed the agenda for them, they was like, no, nigga, you tried to wake the Moors up. You tried to give them a dog whistle. He's never been forgiven for that. So, are they readying the public to speak about the death of the chef? Is this why they now have to come out beforehand and soften the public, soften the blow by letting you know that he was a switch hitter? Are they going to tell you about Michelle? I don't really like that, I don't appreciate that commentary. And I attempt to stay as far away from it as possible. But it's very hard to ignore at this point because there's so many other signs that are pointing, you know what I'm saying, in that direction. I just don't like the narrative. Y'all be talking about Michelle as Michael and shit like that. I guess this person, I'm just like, chill, man. Y'all out here crazy. But niggas be showing up with receipts, man. It's hard, man. It's when these people play into their own conspiracies, that be the shit that I be like, man, yeah, this shit is too weird. I attempt to mind my business and go that away because it'd be too much. It'd be like, how you gonna be playing into your own conspiracies? You feel me? And this situation is the same thing. How you gonna play into your own conspiracies? Nobody turned around and said who that brother, his name was Tafari, right? He was a 44-year-old chef who died off of the waters of Martha's Vineyard by the Obama's crib recently. Nobody said who he was in a boat with. Nobody said who he was texting. Or that whole story got buried and swept under the rug. You feel me? Yeah. It would hurt my heart if I found out that they was playing such a sophisticated ruse with Michelle and Michelle was really Michael. It would hurt my heart. You know what I'm saying? It would hurt my heart. It would hurt my heart to find out that, you know what I mean, that they did it like that from the south side of Chicago. I don't even want to talk about it, man. That shit it's disheartening. But, you know, it again, it just speaks, the evidence speaks to more of the fact as to why, you know, he was doing the things that he was doing policy-wise. Feel me? How did he allow himself This is another one. More than 1 million. Hold on, let me read this over here. Yeah, that's disheartening. Let me play this. Might as well. Shit, while I get ready for this next piece. Because it harkens back to this. We didn't even get into the longer narrative, like why it even matters.
When Barack became president, he tried to force Africa to accept same-sex marriages, and African governments said, we don't allow that stuff here. And Barack sanctioned Africa. Well, Biden duplicated the same thing. Biden said the same thing, trying to force Africa, different countries of Africa, to accept same-sex marriages, and if those countries don't, he will sanction them, starve them. How in the world men knocking up men mean so much to America that you will use your power to starve a baby, starve a woman, because a country want to uphold God's law? When Barack became president, he tried to force Africa to accept same-sex marriages, and African governments said, we don't allow that stuff here. And Barack sanctioned Africa. Well, Biden duplicated the same thing. Biden said the same thing, trying to force Africa, different countries of Africa, to accept same-sex marriages, and if those...
I like when they be preaching like that. That's the preaching I appreciate. Y'all know that's how Pope Pablo give it up. But you gotta ask yourself, like, who's leading this policy and this agenda is obviously showing you that it comes from very high above. And more than me saying, oh, this is a military agenda, it is a commercialized agenda from the top capitalists. So we know that Vanguard and BlackRock, who between them probably control about $55 trillion in assets globally. This is the biggest corporation on the planet that you don't know about that runs transnational governments, right? Not multinational, transnational. George Soros included. We know that they give these companies, because we saw it with the Budweiser fiasco, we saw it with the Target fiasco. We know that these particular companies that control assets give accreditation to different companies to say, all right, this is your diversity ranking, right? You are A plus in our diversity ranking. You just seen the U.S. lose this credit ranking, right? They got dropped to a lower credit rating. It's the same thing that they're utilizing with diversity programs. But the diversity programs are not inclusive of, like, let's say, affirmative action and shit like that. Like, you got to have melanated people in high positions and things of that nature. That's not the new diversity program. The new diversity program is that you got to have members of the new, beloved minority sect, right? Next it'll be immigrants. Now it's the LGBT. and then you'll get triple benefits if it's a immigrant woman who is LGBT. That's how this shit is going, right? That's how this shit is going. You're gonna get corporate benefits for identifying or putting or checking a box, right? Which is really just you're deeper and deeper identifying yourself as one of these new corporate fictions, because what the fuck is a minority? Anyway, in the midst of all of this taking place, right, and then prioritizing segments of society to say we care more about these people than we do over here about these people, right? You would think that the U.S. in its campaign to make America great again would be reinforcing, right, population growth. So let me explain what's taking place. Because of the baby boomer generation and the fact that these niggas have lived through every social experiment way longer than was expected of them, right? America is aging at a particular rate where the social security that has been promised to them has been decimated because of inflation and other bad investments that the U.S. has made. So they don't know how they're going to pay your parents or my parents, right? My father's a baby boomer. My mother's a baby boomer. She's not getting no benefits of service because she was never part of their system. But my father is, right? So if you don't understand about Social Security, I would advise that you look into it about how they say that it plays out. 401ks, IRAs, you know what I'm saying? People putting their money into these different funds, and these funds, you know, playing with these markets, right? So there's a contingency about population that is aging, right? That the government's not going to be able to take care of because they don't have the money to take care of them. They fuck the funds up, right? Oh, I got to go, y'all. It's almost 1 o'clock. I've been running my mouth. I got to get to a meeting. But this article is about the millions of missing U.S., right? The millions Americans missing as U.S. endures a crisis of early death. There's so many people dying early, right? That it's a crisis at this point. It ain't just our babies being killed because of the drilling shit, right? There's swaths of society, 1 million. Right? The mortality rates are crazy. We're losing mad babies, and people are not living to reach the age of 65 anymore. Large majorities, large swaths of people. So the U.S. don't got to worry about them getting Social Security and paying for them because they don't got the numbers. The people are dying. So I'm explaining to you that the ideal for the future of this country is not the regeneration of population, because America's at a negative birth rate already. And then they're losing their occupants to diseases and things of that nature. America is not in the business of furtherance of this particular population. I believe that this is the last population, and they know it. And that's exactly how they want it. And the next population will be transhuman. I don't give a fuck. I know what I'm looking at. I know what the metrics are. Even if I'm in my imagination, goddammit, look how all of the pieces are falling into place. Transgenderism will bring about transhumanism. And that has been their plan all along. You don't read Ray Kurzweil. You don't listen to what these people have been saying for forever and a day. This is their plans, and this is how this shit is playing out. So, once again, not to attack any marginalized groups. But I'm like, these groups are being prioritized and pushed to the front for a particular reason. They're being used for an agenda. You feel me? They're being used for an agenda. You know? And I'm going to end it there. And, you know what I'm saying? We'll catch up at another time. Keep your head on the swivel. Like I said, it's a lot going on today. It's a lot of energy. People is checking up out of here left and right. You feel me? So be alert. Be discerning. And be intentional. Peace.